John here from Embroidery Legacy, and in today's Font Magic video we're going to create a raised embossed key tag using two ESA fonts, so let's get started. Now for the embossed key fobs, I've brought in two different objects. One is the shapes key fobs, and it's a flexi shape. And this one here, if I go to insert character, you can see that I'm using the D, but we have lots of different key fobs that are preset. So you can just choose the key fob, and when you bring it in, it will come in exactly like this. Now this one was set at 100 millimeters, and I'm going to bring each of these in and change them. You can also see that this is set at a satin stitch right now, and we're going to go in and take that shape and we're going to break it apart, and that way we can use whatever types of stitches that we want on it once it's broken apart. But for now we just had to bring it in. And I also brought in this one. It's a huggable applique B, letter B, and it's a flexi fill, and this one's set at about 44 millimeters. I'll probably make it a little bit bigger afterwards. And again, same thing, I can break this apart and I can turn the outlines into whatever shapes or stitches I want. So everything is editable because these are outlines. And again, if you want to see which character you want to bring in, you can choose any letter of the alphabet and basically bring it in. But I wanted to give you a guideline of choosing the two shapes for this project, and I brought them both in on the screen. And now I'll probably start with the first shape, and I'm going to probably make this a little bit bigger. So right now it's 99 millimeters high. I'm going to bring it to about 130, so that way it is going to be the height that I want for this design. That made it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of center it to my 0, 0 mark on the screen. So I'm going to get as close as possible and get it to 0, 0, and that way I have it set up in the center of my area. Now the reason why is this square is where I want to be placing these objects. So I'm going to bring a line in. I just have to click on the ruler area. I'm going to bring a line in right here, and then I'm going to bring a line in at the 0, and I'm going to then know that that is center. And if I then bring a line at the bottom right here, I can see that I have this area here, and this is the space between the two. And I really want to try to kind of get that lined up so that I have a halfway mark so I know where to place my letters. And that way when I line this up and I want to put it in place, I know I can just line it up, and very quickly, if I want to do an entire set of key fobs with all the letters, it becomes very, very easy to put in place. So I'm going to grab that first one again, and it is actually an object. It is going to be broken apart. When I break it apart and select it now, you're going to see now that it has stitch types assigned. Before it was broken apart, it was really just a shape and you couldn't do anything with it. Now you can change it into different fill patterns. I'm going to also go up to this area where it's a fill setting and change it to outlines, because that's really what I want to do. I want to change this to a running stitch, and 2.5 millimeters is fine for that running stitch. That gives me that shape exactly the way I want it. And then I can do the same thing with this B. Right now it is 45. I'm going to change this to 50 millimeters in height. So I'm going to change that to a 50, hit enter, and then I'm going to again break that apart, and now I can do the same thing. I can select it and I can turn this into an outline. So now I have my two outline shapes, and now I can put this right there centered on that little 0, 0 mark, so to speak, in there. And now I know that all of these are going to be the same. I just have to drop in an A, and they're always going to be consistent. So if I look at this in the sewing order, I have my first piece and my second piece, and now is when I'm going to start to duplicate these, because I do want to make sure that I am going to have this piece first. This is going to run the shape that's going around the outside. Then this piece right here, this one, I'm going to grab all three of these, and I'm going to right click on the highlighted areas, and I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to right away change the color so that I have a different color. Now the first color, the first B that I have here, this is what I'm going to use for my embossing. I'm going to put a layer of 3D foam down, and I'll just put it down over the area of that keychain, and then I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to change the underlay, not the underlay, but the stitch length value from 2.5 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters. So it's literally half a millimeter, and this is going to make a whole bunch of little tiny penetrations, which is going to help cut out that foam. So normally I would never want to have a stitch length that is that short, but in this circumstance now I can see that all of these objects have really, really small 0.5 millimeters, and because it's going through a piece of foam that is almost 2 millimeters thick, there still is more than a half a millimeter of throw on the thread. So you shouldn't have any big trouble with regards to thread breaks, but this will help to perforate the foam, because once we lay down the foam, we're going to take this off the machine. We're going to very carefully pull the pieces off and weed out the center pieces, and then it's going to go back onto the machine. We'll put on our vinyl, and then it's going to do the other areas of the design, which is going to start with a running stitch to hold everything in place. Now, to hold it in place properly, it will need to be a running stitch, and this time we do not need to have a stitch length that is 0.5, so we're going to leave it at the 2.5 millimeters, but I am going to turn off the variable run length, and that will make sure that I have a nice long stitch. Now, the one thing that I could do as well before I do that, or actually it doesn't matter whether it's before or after, but I am going to go back to my colors, grab this one, and I'm going to again right click and duplicate it. And you can't see that it duplicated anything until I go back to my objects, and now I can see that it is duplicated. I have a B and then I have another B. I'm going to move this B into the second in order, and then I'm going to change this to a stem stitch, and I'm going to tell it to be 3 passes back and forth, and I'm going to leave the rest of the settings the same, but that way it's going to do that tack down stitch. It's going to hold it in place, and then it will outline it right away. Then it will do this piece right here, and I'm going to take off the variable stitch length again, and then I'll grab this one, move it up in the sewing order, and do that one as a stem stitch, and then it's going to do the next piece, turn off the variable stitch length, grab the next piece down, it's going to do a stem stitch, and now I have all of my stem stitches, and it's going to outline that nicely. It's going to look nice and clean, and then I can put down my finishing stitches. So I'm going to go back to the original key fob. I'm going to duplicate this one, and now I have that one in place, and it already is, it's the same color as the first, but as long as it sees a color change, then I know that's going to basically do the outline, which will show me the cutting line. I'm going to make sure that the variable run length is off on that, because I do not want little short stitches around the curves of this. I want it to be nice and even so it looks clean on the finished product, because these will be the visual finishing stitches. And then I'm going to take that one, I'm going to duplicate it again, and this time I'm going to change this from a single run to a triple run. So it's going to quickly do the first running stitch all the way around, then it will do the second piece, which is going to be a triple run. Again, turn off the variable run length, and then I'm pretty much done, unless I want to put a couple of holes where I can see where I'm going to put my cam snaps afterwards. So this is kind of easy to do, because I'm just going to go into my digitizing tools, and I'm going to go to my circle shape, and I'm just going to create a very quick little round piece so that I can put that in place. Really doesn't matter what size it is, as long as it's fairly large enough so that I know where to actually take my crocodile and sort of put a little piece in there. And then I'm going to take that, and I'm going to make sure that I turn off the again, the same thing, that variable run, so that it just is doing that area. I'm going to come here and I'm going to duplicate this, so I'm just going to duplicate that one, and now I'm going to take this one and put it up over here so that I have my 2 different pieces. I'll just kind of eyeball imagining how my cam snaps are going to be, and you don't really need to have a lot of stitches there. If you want to, you could go in right now, grab that one and duplicate it, and move it up in the order, and then do this one right here and duplicate that one and move it up in the order. And that way you know that it's going to do at least 2 passes all the way around. Again, just make sure these are nice and centered on here. And I'm going to make sure this one's nice and centered as well, so I can just kind of eyeball it. I want to make sure that it looks half decent. Make sure these ones are over a little bit as well. And again, these are going to be covered up, so they don't have to necessarily be perfect, but that way you know that it's going to, have this flap go over. I can then use my other tools to add my cam snaps. And also remember that any of these objects are customizable. Because they are objects, you can go in, and if you wanted to make these little tabs longer or whatever you want to do, you could go in and change them beforehand and customize and change the shape of anything within this, so that you're not necessarily bound by one shape within the design. So you can go in here and do pretty much anything you want to the shapes. But keep in mind that as you change them, obviously I would want to repeat that first shape so that it would be the same for all of the finishing stitches. So I just showed that as a quick example that you can modify or change anything within the design. These are super quick, super fast, and easy to do. Just remember, you're always creating something the way you would imagine it sewing out. So if I look at the order here, it's going to do a placement stitch, then it's going to do a placement for the foam, that it's going to knock it out with a really tight 0.5 millimeter stitch. Then I'm going to put down my piece of vinyl, and then I do the embossing look. This is going to secure it right in place. It's going to do the finishing stitches around the outside. I cut this out, I add my cam snaps, and you have a very quick project that took very little time to sew and very little time to lay out in your software.